Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia, and I am your host. And once again, as always, I am here with my co-host in life and on this show, Mr. Glenn Sheridan.
Hello, everyone.
And today we have another super special guest that I'm really looking forward to introducing. But before we do, I just want to say thank you, that we are so incredibly grateful and mindful that we are coming to you from Saanich on the unceded lands of the Wasanich peoples. So our very super special guest today is actually someone that we just met like moments ago, is someone that I encountered through a Facebook post a few weeks ago that really got me thinking. And it was just so refreshing to see someone who was being so candid, so forthright, so vulnerable, and expressing her thoughts and beliefs in such an incredibly cogent, crystal clear way. So just a little bit of what I know about this person so far is that she describes herself as being in transition. She is a former community pharmacist who studied in Saskatchewan, and she has since shifted gears out of the healthcare field onto a much more spiritual path. After a lifelong journey and struggle with physical and mental health issues, she underwent a personal journey of transformation, which has led her to basically where she is now. So this person firmly believes that more people need to know, and that there's emphasis on the know part there. You are not your diagnosis, and your body is not the enemy. She is a life coach and a mental fitness trainer, and she works with other women realizing they are no longer aligned with the traditional medical model and are seeking long-lasting solutions to health, healing, and happiness. Now, there is so much more in here, but I just want to read the last little bit about her business because it is so super amazing and joyful to read. So she recently sold her home, moved 4.5 hours away, and is expecting her first child in November. Congratulations. The CEO and CBR, Chief Belly Rubs, of her company are a pair of snuggly house cats that have been with her since 2009 and 2010, respectively. She rounds out her employees with a 12-year-old tiny domestic house fox, Pomeranian, that makes sure everyone's reflexes work well by acting as Captain Underfoot. And there I spill the beans. Anyway, she loves to hang out on Instagram where she shares free content on mental fitness, how trauma in healthcare workers perpetuates the broken system, and photos of her furry employees. So knowing there is so much more already coming up in the conscious conversation that's already happening, Holly McCorriston, tell us, who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? The simplest, easiest answer is I am just a channel through which universal creative energy flows through. And I don't know if it gets any more simple than that.
Wow. Okay. I didn't even have a chance to write that down because it was just, it was super simple. So let's see, not knowing you really, as we on some level do almost all of our guests so far, this is a wide open field of possibilities for conversation. And so I guess maybe the first question that I would love to ask, seeing as the thing that caught my eye in the Facebook post when I first saw it, was that you started it off saying that you were or are a former pharmacist and then launched into, and I do have the Facebook post in case we do end up referring to it here, but then just launched into this extremely coherent, well-written piece that expressed how you were feeling and your views on certain issues that are just floating around all over the place and are so prevalent right now as the unfoldment of COVID continues to express and unfold and morph and shift and change and all that kind of stuff. So can you tell us what prompted the change from, the shift from this, this working in healthcare as a pharmacist to where you are now? I mean, we already know there was like a personal transformation that took place, but can you just elaborate on that, please?
I absolutely can. Before I go there, I do just want to say that that post that we're speaking to was it was generated from this channel that I just spoke to. I don't actually remember writing it. Publishing it was the hardest part. It was just like I was responding to something I had read with what's going on, and it was like I just couldn't hold it in anymore. It was like, and I typed it into my phone on the Instagram platform in about 5 minutes, and I was like, what am I doing? Can I really put this out there? And there it went, and it's been, whew, it's gone a long ways,
So then,
a
you know
really
what,
long ways.
since you just start, so let's stick with that then. So the idea that, something just had to come through you, just had to be birthed and unleashed into the world. And then the trepidation that you felt, like with hitting the send or enter button, or, whatever it was, what was that? Sort of like there's this thing that just is almost a life, force entity of its own. And then there's like me that it's coming through, and what's going to happen, or what am I thinking, or what am I feeling, just as I'm hitting the send button.
I think that was a pivotal moment of me accepting all of my parts. It was like, because I had been trying to stuff the pharmacist part of myself and that past life into a closet and pretending she didn't matter. However, especially with the state of the world right now, I also had to accept that the voice of a former pharmacist has some credibility,
Mhm.
especially in getting that message out of like, well, what about intuition? What about love? Like, yes, science is important, but what about all these other things? Um, and yeah, and sitting in the like, can I really do this? Can I accept all of these parts? And also accept that I know deeply, capital K, that the energy with which we create something is often the energy with which it's received. So I didn't even get any negative feedback for about 5, 6 days. And then it came in. It started, I think, reaching people that maybe weren't ready for it or didn't understand it and were triggered, or however we want to call that. But it was really peaceful for a couple of days. I felt really good. It was like, oh, it's been released, and I'm no longer responsible for what happens to this creative post that I made, and it's gone. And yeah, then there was some interesting things I had to deal with, but
And so, what, uh, in terms of calendar time, when was that again? That was recently.
I posted that August 26th. It was in the evening, and
Oh,
it had already started going viral before I went to bed. Um,
okay.
I got my sister on standby and was like, just in case something happens overnight, and I need some support in the morning, like, can you just be there? And I woke up and was like, oh,
Yeah.
nothing happened. I'm fine. Like, it wasn't so dangerous. I'm still safe. I'm okay.
So what was it that had you thinking, that some part of you was thinking that it might be dangerous?
Because it was so true. It was just so true. It was yeah, and raw and vulnerable, and when we're in those spaces of like, oh, I'm exposing myself and what I really feel and what I feel really called to share, and it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's And as someone coming out of healthcare where you have your wall up and you're the expert and you don't show emotion or your personal beliefs, it was very like, this is very different than who I've shown up as everywhere else, behind the counter with the white coat on, and I'm the expert and everyone should listen to me. And that's not what I was saying. I was saying you should listen to yourself. You should always listen to yourself. Don't you get a say?
And that I think is just I have it sitting in front of me here because I asked if you could send it to me so that I could print it out if I needed it to. And I just want to preface, everything else that happens in this podcast is to say that no, at least for me, I am not trying to get someone to think a certain way, to feel a certain way, to, ascribe to, my beliefs or my belief system. We're having a conversation. We're, just talking and seeing what comes up. And there are things that we may disagree on, but the ability to have that conversation, to hold space, for differing views, opposing views, and still know that beneath that opposition, underneath those views, behind all of it, that each and every one of us is interconnected in and as this incredible infinite profundity that is the very essence of everyone and everything throughout time, space, and beyond. For me, that's what this is about. And to be able to talk about stuff that we don't agree with, to be able to talk about contentious issues, to be open and vulnerable, and step into the danger zone, or whatever you want to call it, and still have that capital K knowing that underneath it all, we are, completely 100% fully supported by that intuitive knowing and wisdom that is the crux of who and what we are. That's what this is about. So is it okay if I read just a chunk of out of that post? I mean, I know it's
Absolutely.
whatever, but I'm just gonna, because it's sitting here, and I'm just gonna pick out stuff that that just sort of, stands out. So let's see. True informed consent includes providing you with accurate information about what happens if you do nothing, and reminding you that you have a choice. There is no empowerment or autonomy when your choice is taken away. Your body keeps the score. Your body knows the way. Your critical thinking and knowing only come online when you are held in love and compassion, the other side of fear and coercion. You decide. My pharmacy degree can't decide for you. No one else's medical degree can decide for you. This goes for anything you choose. You decide. You are your own best resource. There is no urgency. Slow down and listen to what's beyond the fear. With love and a little heart, Holly. So that was about the last third of that post. And just even now, I read that and I got goosebumps because it feels like such a beautiful and empowering reminder that no matter what is going on, no matter what we are thinking, no matter what we are feeling, whether we're afraid, whether we are excited, whether we're nervous, whether, whatever it is that's going on, that there is that in us that knows, no matter what. And just sort of like in your bio, when you say that, it's important for everyone to know you are not your diagnosis. For me, it's important for people to know you are not your thoughts. You are not your beliefs. You are not the circumstances, of your life. You totally have a hand in creating your life experience. And those life experiences are based on your thoughts and beliefs, but you are not those things. You are the thing that is underneath, behind, within, whatever it is, that you want to say. You are infinitely more powerful, creative, and resilient than any of it ever. And what you wrote in there, I just thought was so, so incredibly beautiful and such an amazing reminder of that. So congratulations and thank you. And I am so excited for you that it went viral, because it just, to me, that means that a lot of people got the reminder, a lot of people resonated with it. And that resonance, I feel just like uplifts, people from within individually, which happens then collectively. So good on you. Thank you. That's
Thank
not
you.
a question. That's just like,
Yeah.
what, Holly?
Thank you. Yeah. No, you summed that up beautifully. And if I could have stood at the pharmacy counter and shared that with every single patient I had, I think I would have lived in a different community, but that wasn't my role. So
yeah, I'm not going to go into huge detail, but I've gotten in a little bit of trouble over the last few weeks myself.
Mm.
for talking about what I believe in and what I hold true. And a few weeks ago, or I guess last week, I wrote a piece on the value of freedom that I sent out to my community. And some of those people in my community are also part of the spiritual community that I belong to, where I play a role in spiritual leadership. And the stuff that I wrote in my post is stuff that I feel very strongly about, but it was also questioning. And that's the thing that I feel like there just isn't necessarily going enough. There isn't enough questioning going on. Like there's a lot of, you know, sort of hearing and subscribing and taking action according to a certain narrative, but the questioning of the narrative, the questioning of, sort of like what you were talking about in your post, is that, do I have a choice here? We always have a choice. Even when it feels like we don't have a choice, there is a choice. And even when we make a tough decision, when people are saying, so and so made me do this, you have the choice to stand in that decision from confidence, like maybe not liking it, maybe thinking I would have rather have not done it, but where can I find the value and sort of the I don't know what word I'm looking for, but to confidently stand in, in the choice that I made this choice. No one made me do anything. It may have made it really hard to not, do something else or to not do it, but ultimately I'm choosing, what I'm doing and how I'm responding and how I'm reacting. But just the questioning of like, is this necessary? Is there another way? Is there another way we can look at it? Not this feeling of like, I'm right, you're wrong, and there's only way to do stuff. And so when I wrote this post on the value of freedom and got a lot of feedback, more feedback than I've gotten in a long time. And I think some of it had to do with, what do you think? Tell me, what do you think? I want to know what you think and how you feel. And so there were responses from all over, the board or the map or whatever. Some people were angry. Some people, how can you even talk about that, especially when you have a spiritual leadership role in a spiritual community? Or, well, this is why I think this way, this is what this allows me to do, and it's based on these beliefs. To, oh my god, thank you so much for saying that, because we need to hear more of that perspective. To just like, yeah, I totally support you. To having friends who moved from South Africa, from a country where people were imprisoned and killed for not going in line with the government, thinking, what is happening here in Canada that we are being told, to do this when it just doesn't seem right, and it seems to go against our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I know there's like a whole bunch in there that could be unpacked, but it's just, where's the questioning? it's my big question. And that's what's gotten me in some hot water over the last couple of weeks. To the point where I'm questioning things, for myself, as in like, where do I belong? What do I believe? What are my beliefs? Do my beliefs, that were, I was firmly entrenched in, a couple of months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, do they still ring true? And when I am talking to people, when I am asking people questions, when I am having conversations and listening to people, where am I coming from? Am I coming from the absolute highest level of consciousness and standing on principle in what I believe to just be good and true? Or am I getting caught up in the circumstances, getting caught up in the emotions, getting caught up in ego, and, you know, going down kind of thing? And like, it does go up and down and in and out and that kind of thing. And I'm so grateful to have an incredibly supportive network of Glenn, of our daughter, of friends, of people in my spiritual community here and down in Los Angeles, through which I study, where I work at the chiropractic clinic, the people who come through those doors, the trainer I work with, like all over the place, to remind me when I start kind of going down and like, oh, and getting caught up and stuff, to just bring it back to like, no, this is who and what I am. This is what I know. And no matter what I'm feeling, no matter what's going on, I am I am firmly grounded in this, and it's okay to be shaken, and it's okay to be jostled and stirred and whatever, because ultimately all of that is also amazing opportunity for further growth, right? Further growth and expansion and leaning into that capital K knowing that you were talking about earlier.
So
Thoughts?
what's the question?
There's no question.
Okay.
That's just me talking about
Yeah.
how there's no that I feel like there I'm asking where's the questioning, that there isn't enough questioning going on.
Yeah, and to speak to that, I mean, I kind of addressed it in that post where it's like our ability to think critically and question goes offline when we are. I mean, it depends what kind of language you want to use. If when you're in your lower self, when you are engaged in a trauma response, when you're protecting yourself, when you're using your energy for defense, um, it's complicated to question, and it really changes things. And I'm even seeing it behind the scenes in pharmacy. I had to write a critical thinking skills essay to get into the program, and I'm not seeing my colleagues doing critical thinking right now. I'm seeing them trapped in their own spirals of stress and disconnect and frustration and not knowing who they are and just doing what they're told because it's easier, it's safer. Like this is the thing. I think people also have this misconception that the people that are supposed to be looking after them are doing the thinking for them, and they're not. Like they're scared, they're trapped, they're in a system that perpetuates almost abuse, where there's always someone over your shoulder going, well, if you don't do it the way we tell you, you'll get in trouble. Like there's so much of that when you work in healthcare that I don't even think people realize that they're trapped in that system. And so then when you have everyone else relying on you, because it's like, don't Google it. Ask a trusted resource, ask your doctor, ask your pharmacist, ask your specialist, whatever. And it broke my heart every time someone asked me a question and I didn't have the time, ability, energy, or resources to do the research for them because I was supposed to be the expert. So that's where I had to really decide if I was going to stay or go, because I was like, am I enabling and empowering people to do their own research, make their own decisions, connect with themselves? Because even though I'm the one with the white coat on, I don't know everything and I can't possibly. And how frustrating is it for you to be told to rely on me when I can't actually do that for you? So we have these hierarchical structures where these experts are supposed to be at the top and they're supposed to know everything. And I think we also forget that they're human and they're struggling. And I'm not the only one that's like, what are we doing? But they're scared because,
Mm-hmm.
again, they're in this system of, I can't speak. And that is happening, whether people want to admit it or not. There are people that would love to speak, but they're scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, okay. So briefly, the one opportunity I've had to listen to you, I mentioned earlier before we started, was listening to an interview on a podcast called "The Dirt and the Divine," which is excellent. I recommend listening to that. Um, and you had mentioned a few things about, and of course, it's getting a little bit more into where you are now, where you are going, where you're the direction that you're transitioning into, and um, transforming yourself into as a coach and a healer, I guess. So when you mentioned in that podcast about asking uh, customers sort of to take a moment to just like um, be present with you, which at the end of the before you quit your position became more difficult because there's plexiglass dividers between the customer and the service provider now in most stores. But that connection that you were trying to reestablish with people, just to give them that moment at least to kind of say, oh, you know. And I think you'd said you'd given them, for example, a bottle to hold to their chest and say, does this feel right?
Mm.
You know, just close your eyes or just. So your, you know, what you just mentioned before about basically you're describing a bureaucracy, right? So most institutions, they have that kind of bureaucratic makeup that it, you know, the story goes that it only works if everyone's doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and in like the military, you have to do what you're told. Otherwise, this all falls apart, and it's on you. You know, if it goes wrong. So reconnecting with another human being as a human being and reminding them of their strengths and your, as you mentioned in the podcast too, um, your sort of, each of us has an ability to be a hero, you know, to go on the hero's journey. So you're, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. You're basically trying to facilitate now people at whatever level you're meeting them, um, to remind themselves of that. Like, you know, fine, I'm the expert in a certain scenario. I have expertise. I have some experience. I have some insight that may assist you and so forth. But don't forget yourself. Don't forget your own intuitive knowing that there, you know what's right or wrong for you, right? So, can you just speak to that a little bit about how you were able to even sneak that stuff in just to kind of keep your own self centered when you're helping people?
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. And I wrote that I wrote very little down for notes, but I did write down, my question for myself that led to all of this was, how do I help people want to help themselves?
Mm-hmm.
It because that I found healthcare so disempowering because we weren't enabling people to make their own decisions or trust that little part of them that wanted to ask a question. Even when I had interns, interns would come in and they're working with you and they would hesitate to ask questions that could be potentially life-saving because, they thought they might get in trouble or maybe they don't know enough. And it's like, if there's a part of you that says, I should ask this question, I'm curious, trust that part. Don't trust the part that comes in and goes, oh, she's too busy. Um, and the same I would say to anybody that's in any situation, whether it's a relationship or a patient caregiver interaction. It's like, if part of you wants to ask a question,
Yeah.
ask it. And again, these systems don't really necessarily allow for that because we have all these providers that are stressed out and busy and no time. And it does feel often like you're being rushed and judged. And I was that pharmacist. This is the other thing. I was the one that was judging and, like, why can't you just like not eat candy bars? Like, geez.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that make them feel?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting curious about it, because that's the other thing we don't necessarily investigate. And then I just kept getting told, like, well, is that really your job, Holly, to be, you know, encouraging these people to question and look after themselves and those kinds of things? Um, and it's like even former versions of me, the really intelligent, independent, know-it-all pharmacists. How do I go back in time and help other people like me that are trapped in that defensive spiral where you do feel trapped, and that self taking them, encouraging them to take the self responsibility for themselves as well, because self-awareness, self responsibility, I couldn't save all my patients. It wasn't my job to do it. I
Yeah.
couldn't save my family of origin. It wasn't my job to do it, but I had to come to that realization that I was even trying. And then detaching myself from the outcome. Because that's the thing, Glenn. If I hand you the bottle of pills and I go, here, like, how does this feel? I also have to be very unattached to whether or not you say good or bad.
Mhm.
Right.
Because if I, on some level, if I don't want you to take them, then I'm going to be disappointed, and then I may withdraw or no longer be that person that I was trying to be for you. So I also had to get very clear on whether, like we were speaking about earlier, where is this coming from for me? Do I have an agenda? What's my attention? Or is it to hold space and be that channel that helps other people connect to their own energetic channel so that they can know, because I can't possibly know.
Yeah. And that, of course, I don't want to say the majority of people, but I suppose it is. Like as a percentage, how many of us are actually trusting enough of our own impulses and intuition and just understanding that we are worthy. So obviously, if we're worthy, then whatever comes to us is going to be beneficial to us and others, right? How many people actually are like that? I think many are not because they're dealing with trauma or some experience that they just keep reliving. And and as you just said, that's a really interesting point that you were reminding yourself to step back regarding the outcome of, you know, you offer a hand and it's up to them whether they want to take it, and then how they take it and what they do with that and how much time they want to spend uh, just doing a little deep dive with like, yeah, is this right for me? Or um, that's incredibly that's really insightful. So thank you. Whew. But again, and this whole the hero's journey thing, like I dabble with writing, so I love that whole notion of story structure and the whole. I was trying to say ask Glacia yesterday, like, in terms of the thresholds that you meet in that journey. The first one, um, there are opportunities that are given to you to sort of grow, to step. I think, like, for example, in the Matrix movie, it's like Morpheus is trying to get Neo at the beginning to jump across a ledge, like when he's being chased, by the agents, and of course he looks at the ledge and is like, no way, he's not gonna he's not gonna make that leap because, hey, I might die, and of course he gets captured. But so when we each have these, this, you have the call and you have like, hey, maybe, you're part of the solution. What could you do? Maybe there's an opportunity here to step into service or into questioning or something. So as a society, it's almost like we're still, many of us are like stuck in the, like, no, we're not leaving the cave, we're not leaving the tribe, we're staying by the fire. It's not nice out there, it's dangerous. And there's so much encouragement, there's so much pull to stay there, when at some point someone's got to go out and find food or whatever it is. Sorry, my analogies are all over the place here, but yeah, I just think that I'm curious about how many people are doing any kind of like actual questioning of themselves, never mind what's going on outside, within the context of what we're kind of all going through.
Well, that was another big part of me being able to get out of where I was and getting to where I was realizing I had to quit looking for an external resource that had all the answers, and I had to go inside. I went so far as to interview with another company about opening my own store because I thought that that would be better. Little Miss Independent thought me having my own pharmacy would be better. And I had a 4.5 hour drive home, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, and then I'm like, there was this little whisper of like, you don't feel good. and you are maybe desperate and you keep looking for the solutions, because first it was traveling and then it was this and then it was that. And then, you know, and it hadn't occurred to me that maybe I just wasn't in the right environment either. But it's this, how many of us are willing to go inside versus outside and have that realization that when we close our eyes
Mm-hmm.
and breathe, that's it. There is nothing else.
Yeah.
And the first thing we do when we come into this physical world is take a breath, and the last thing we do before we leave is take a breath, and all we do in the middle is breathe. And I think it's Byron Katie. She says all we're really doing is standing, sitting, and lying down, and we just switch between the three positions, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that was the other thing that I just couldn't find the answer to, was how do you help inspire, tell, teach, whatever people that, the answers are in here. And I think the only solution is that you show them. Is you, like, we live our lives, we lean into love, we lean into compassion, we lean into curiosity, uh, connect to our own values, creativity, and we take the clear, concise action, and then we talk about it. So like the hero's journey, and I keep meaning to go into the more research, but I try not to take in a lot of outside stuff too. It's like, well, if I have everything I need inside of me, can I just let it come through when it's supposed to? So it is, I think at the beginning of everything, we need to find ourselves. And then usually there's some exploration of the story. It's like, well, what was it all for? What did it lead me to? And then from that, I think most of us do find our service, our ability to serve. But it's really hard if you're just trying to serve and meet your needs and get those core needs of like being valued and loved from serving, if you haven't found yourself and linked it all back to your story and accepted all of it. Because like I said, I couldn't write that post until I accepted that even though I didn't have a license anymore, I still had a degree, and what I had to say still mattered.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Oh.
I can speak. I just wasn't sure if you were gonna respond to that. Um, wow, thank you again. So much in there to unpack. Just at the sort of very end of what you were talking about the inside versus outside and the being of service by sort of stepping into service, but to sort of do that in order to feed and nourish yourself and fill yourself in a way that you really can only do by turning within. um, I think is an incredible sort of distinction to make. And it reminds me of when I was in conversation with my friend Reverend Andrea, who we had on last week, Andrea Arlington, and there was a conversation that we had last November when I really spiraled down into a really, really, really just very achy, painful, raw place, and knew that it would pass, but it took me a bit by surprise. I knew it was an incredible learning opportunity and there was growth happening, but it was a really hard place to be. So she was one of three incredible, amazing women ministers, actually, that I reached out to and had an amazing conversation, very different conversation with each of them. And at the end of each conversation, each of them did this incredible spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. And during our conversation, Andrea was asking me questions. And at one point, she was just saying, look, Lasia, if you are in this teaching, if you are, if you became a spiritual practitioner and you're stepping into ministry to help other people, then fucking quit. You know, if you are in it because you can't not do it, because there is such a strong call on your heart, on your soul, that it is something that you can't not do, then do it until you feel, and now I'm sort of, paraphrasing, that one swear line was totally what she said. But if keep doing it until you feel so incredibly grounded and confident and just like, with every fiber of your being 100% how infinitely powerful, creative, and resilient you are. And then other people around you will come to you. They will be attracted by that. And then that's when you kind of do what you were just saying, which is we teach and we support by just being that, by just coming from that intuitive wisdom, by living as that, by being the example. Because everybody is on their journey wherever they are. It takes as long as it takes. And you can read, whatever self-help books, you can do as many. I'm doing a challenge right now. I have 2 on the go. But you can do as many of those things. But ultimately, if you're trying to do it for someone else, or to be part of a community or something like that, then you're always directing your attention outward. And even though there's value in that, if you aren't super grounded and founded in who and what you are, and just like immersed and infused knowingly and consciously in that intuitive wisdom that we all are, you're going to keep doing, you're never going to get there, and not that you ever get there, because there's always more to learn. There's always more to lean into, always more to be expanded by. So the whole, service thing, I think was a great thing that you said, was just, we really need to nourish our own selves first, and then we can lead by example. What I also wanted to say was, there was something that came up as both of you were talking a few minutes ago about solution, and Glenn, I think, mentioned it first, being part of the solution. And I just wanted to like sort of throw in there, when I hear be part of the solution, to me, it sounds like maybe there's a problem to begin with. And I don't subscribe to that. Like I feel like there is growth, there is evolution, that like I've said before, like we've all said in some way before, underneath whatever's going on, whatever's happening, I hesitate to use the word perfection, but let's just say that whether it's spiritually perfect or just universally, profoundly, however you want to say, sort of like the ultimate, the zeitgeist of life and living and beingness, that's always there, and that there's nothing that's broken. We just have opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to rediscover that perfection, or that intuitive wisdom, or that capital K knowing within ourselves all the time. That's just me saying that.
Yeah, it's that I guess the idea that if anything was supposed to be any different than it was, it would be. Mm-hmm. And everything else is exactly perfect the way it is, even if our minds don't think so, because they do like to make meaning. They like to find a problem, a solution. The mind's very attracted to the binary, good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, black, white, right side, wrong side, that kind of thing. So I was just hearing in the advice that your friend gave you last November last year as well, I was hearing how applicable that advice may be for what's going on right now too. Because if you're making your decision for everyone else and for people outside of you, and because someone else is telling you it's what's best for you, but there's a part of you that's like, maybe the answer is a fuck no. And that's okay. Yeah, this is the thing. Because again, even if I at the pharmacy, I did this too. I'd get lots of, I'd get the grumpy old men. They'd come in and they'd be happy to see me, but they would just want to complain. Like, I can't believe I got to come here once a month. This is garbage, da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to take these. What? Because I was giving them the permission. It's right. And then they would have my doctor will get mad. And it's like, are you taking these for your doctor, or are you taking them for you? What, because ultimately I wasn't trying to convince them one way or another. I was just, again, trying to put the ball back in their court. What can you decide about this? Are you, if you really don't want to be on them anymore, are you willing to have that discussion with your physician, knowing that they don't necessarily know what's best for you? Can you become the hero of your own story and the authority of your own life and start asking questions that go, well, why am I taking these? Because someone told me to? Because I think I have to? Because I'm going to disappoint my wife or my doctor or my kids if I don't? Like, why am I taking them?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people that were medication resistant, and it came down to, I would also say, if you're putting them in your mouth anyway, can you do it from an energy of neutrality and just okayness without a charge on it? Or can you do it even with a little bit of gratitude? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if these are really doing anything for me or not, but can I accept that someone else thinks they're helpful?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful that I live in a society where I have access to them and I can afford them and da 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 da. Because again, what we believe, I think, has a lot more to do necessarily with the intervention to begin with. Because if you
Yep.
believe it's helping you, and we know this with the placebo effect and the nocebo effect and all of these things, it is, with what energy are you receiving what you're putting in your body?
Yep.
Are you receiving it with a little bit of resistance, um, feeling pressured, coerced, whatever, or are you doing it for you? And I've been having lots of conversations. I'm like, do what you want, but ask yourself, what's in it for me? What's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's not selfish to ask
Mm-hmm.
what's in it for me.
This just is a slight aside. The fact that you're talking about this and the different experiences you had with the different people coming in to the pharmacy where you worked, it reminds me of when I worked for Sydney Natural Foods here, in a town about 7 minutes away from where we live. And I worked there for 2.5 years as a natural living and supplements advisor, let's say. And so I ran the little grocery area, which was great. And then I also would advise people on supplements. And it was amazing how many people just would come in, everyone with their stories. That was my favorite thing of that job, was just listening to people who really needed to be heard. Because I don't know what it's like in Saskatchewan or even Alberta at this point, but here it's almost impossible to find a family doctor. And if you have a family doctor, chances are you have one question that you can bring in and have maybe a 10 or 15-minute appointment, and then it's like next. And because we have a very, very, very senior population here, there are a lot of people who are on medication, various medications to, counteract the symptoms, or deal with the symptoms from other medications. And there are a lot who are also very active, and I mean, the packs of cyclists that are just you encounter every day here all year long are incredible. But anyway, people would come in and they would be in different stages, or of different minds of, a list. It's like, I got to get this because my doctor said so, or I'm on this medication, can I take this? Or I'm on this medication and I want to get off it, what can I take? And so a lot of times, I have to tell you, we would end up, we talk to them, we give them information, but it's like, but it's up to you to decide. It's up to you to make the decision for what you believe is best for you. And if there were any sort of, potential contraindications that might come up with prescription meds, we would say, go talk to your pharmacist, because that's your pharmacist. Part of your pharmacist's job is to know about the contraindications. And they're like, well, I'll just talk to my doctor. I'm like, don't talk to your doctor. Your doctor isn't going to be able to tell you. Okay. When it comes to nutrition, you know, don't talk to your doctor. Like, they've got about 5 minutes of, nutritional information in all of their years of medical school, unless you're dealing, say, with maybe a naturopath or a Chinese medicine doctor, and then the occasional integrative, medicine or functional medicine doctor. But yeah, it just, and I'm thinking as you're talking, like, we sent all these people to pharmacists because it's like, they know, they know, they know. And I'm thinking, oh geez, I'm kind of, even though I didn't send people your way, but I'm also thinking, I would have loved it if they had gotten someone like you, who would have just been able to, from time to time, empower them to say, you have it in you to make the best decision for you. And if you don't want to take them, you don't have to take them, you know and if you do take them, like you said, can you just sort of, choose to come from a place of like, I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to do this for whatever reason. Or like in our spiritual community, a lot of people say God is in the medicine. Um, but yeah, it just made me think of that. The number of times I said, go talk to your pharmacist. Your pharmacist will be able to tell you about, whether or not you can take these mushrooms or these herbs or these, whatever, along with these, prescription
Yeah,
medications.
because that's what we're told. That's what we're
Mhm.
told from the commercials and the government and the this and that was the other thing at the towards the end of my career there was some information sent out from the company and they just said, pharmacists are the medication experts. And I was like, I'm a lot more than that. And I'm not willing to settle for that anymore
Yeah.
because I wasn't allowed to integrate the rest of these parts of me that because again, that minute at the counter holding space for someone that maybe didn't yet know how to hold it for themselves may have indeed been the pivotal moment where they knew with a capital K. And maybe they couldn't cultivate it for themselves when they walked out the door because it is a little bit of a skill, I guess, that we forget that we have.
Mhm.
It's not that everyone can do it, but I didn't know how to hold space for myself back in the old days. And yeah, it is. So let's forgive that version of you that didn't know. And just to say that too, like even if someone does come in with a list of 10 herbal medications, their naturopath has recommended, they want to know if they work with their meds. Depending on the day, the answer is probably I can run it through the interaction checker, and the interaction checker is going to say probably not enough evidence to recommend.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then we're just usually like, I mean, I don't know. It's at your
Yeah.
own risk. And
Yeah.
that's it. So, and I think again, it comes back to the personal responsibility. You do decide, you're the ultimate authority of you. And are you willing to accept all of the benefits and the consequences, the potential consequences? If there is an interaction and you end up in the hospital, are you willing to admit that it was you that put them both in your mouth? Not my doctor told me I could, or the pharmacist said I could, the lady at the natural health food store said I could.
Yeah.
And that's of course where some of the other side they go, oh, you're victim blaming and the system should have known better and the system should have supported them. And it's like the system is broken.
Yeah.
And it's run by a bunch of people that are also feeling very broken and unsupported and tired and conflicted.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. That. Excuse me. And even zooming out from that, like the again, I'm more tied in with outside of Canada in terms of news and how the systems work in particularly the UK and Ireland and the States. But the whole notion that there's this structure in place where there are certain in there are guarantees that are suggested, but they're not actual. Like when you have the VAERS system for adverse reactions to vaccines in the states, and they, what has happened in the last year or so has like outstripped in terms of numbers what has happened in the previous. I think it's about 25 years maybe. Um, like combined all of those other vaccines for whatever, there are a small amount of the reactions that we've seen in the last little while. But the back to the accountability thing, those companies are not, they're not liable for that damage. I think it's similar. You can comment in a second about this in Canada, but it's like, you know, in terms of like, oh, we have to keep the economy going. The lobbyists went to the policymakers and said, look, we can't operate and we can't, keep people well if we got this thing hanging over us that we may be sued out of existence because we make a mistake with one of our products. But really, it's like what kind of a devil's bargain was that? Like, oh, we'll just like put that to the side. This could go horribly wrong. In a sort of thalidomide type scenario, or but like we'll pretend that that's behind the curtain, but we'll just leave it there. But really, we'll keep putting the ads out and showing that, like, oh, here's a lovely couple in their, 60s and 70s out holding hands and just living a nice life, and yet they've got these issues, and there may be some of these listed side effects and whatever. But it's sort of, you just shake your head when you sort of make that realization. But, like, what are you supposed to do with that? Because most people will make that bargain for themselves. They'll think, well, I need to be on blood thinners, or I need to be doing this to my body and just to keep up, just to keep getting out of bed every morning, when, like, no one, okay, partly it's no one has taken them aside to say, hey, maybe there's some options for you in terms of me giving you something. Maybe you could talk to someone about getting some things out of your diet. Maybe not taking sugar, or not taking things that may be, causing like a leaky gut scenario or something in your body where it's like fighting itself, and you're just like inflamed all the time within your body because you're fighting the food that normally gives you nutrition. Like, it's such a upside down topsy turvy scenario in this system where it's like, uh, yeah, that's just the way it is. And it's like, well, but each person has to decide. Like, they're writing their own story. Like, is that what I want for me? And do I think that's worth it? Like, and maybe it gets to crisis before they realize, oh crap, like, I need to rethink this. Whether it's heart attacks or strokes or whatever it might be. So it's just, it's too much. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the hills I just about died on was always sleeping pills. They're only supposed to be short term.
You dream.
It was a huge thing for me. And I mean, I'd always been a good sleeper, but it was like, how are these people so willing to just put this medication in their mouth every night with all of the very, very, very well-known risks associated with them? And at first I was coming at it the wrong way, and then as I made my own transition, I did find ways to, not abandon them or blame them or shame them. It was just, you know, are you aware that, every time they refill it, because I had people on sleeping pills every night for 5, 10 years, because this is the thing, I worked in the same location, same store, same patients, 11 and a half years. I have seen patterns that nobody else will see because I worked in that kind of an environment. And it's true, Glenn. Like, some people just aren't ready until they're ready. Like, I had right before I left, I finally said something to someone, and she was like, "Is this why my coworkers are worried about my memory? Because I've been taking these pills every night for 5 years?" And I'm like, quite possibly. Now, if I had to come, I've been telling you this every month for last, like, how does that help? It
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't help. Uh, so I mean, that's on me. That's on me. How do I want to show up? How do I want to support these people and recognize that they just are where they are until they aren't? So, and I don't know what happened in the end. I don't know if what the conclusion to that is, but it is this idea that it's also none of our business, I guess, if people are making choices to put things in their bodies and engage in behaviors that we don't think are what's best for them. Because how do we know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like those trauma responses that keep us protected and in pattern until we see them. And they were serving a purpose to keep us safe in some way, shape, or form. I think every behavior has a positive intent, even if we don't see it. And when we start to believe that, we can have more compassion for others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Agreed.
an interesting hill, though.
What a hill. And
Yeah.
I blurted out you dream because I don't know. I don't know what happened with it. I don't know if it's back on the market or not, because of the controversy around it a couple of years ago. But I was blown away at how people would come in and buy it by the case, something that was meant to be taken for 3 weeks maximum. as an aid, not as the thing that makes you fall asleep every single night. And just, I mean, people finally they slept, but a lot of people also ended up just feeling drugged, like completely knocked out. And thought, yeah, here's this thing in a box that I can take that, allows me to sleep. But it's like, what was it that was getting in the way of you sleeping to begin with? Maybe it's worth looking at that. And so there were people, who went on it, and then ultimately there were a lot of people who needed to get off it because they felt a little too dependent on it. But yeah, that was like, wow, it just was something that seemed to work, relatively well for so many people, and the demand, it was just so high. And then when it got pulled from the market, for however many months, people were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and then it's like, well, let's look at other options, like your lifestyle, your diet. And then there are other things that have been on the market for many, many years that work well for different people. It was just a strange thing because there was this one thing that just like seemed to work for so many people, which I think is rare that, there will be one product that would just sort of have that sort of blanket impact the way that it did. Um, but what I wanted to say was just a little shout out to my husband, Glenn, who actually used leaky gut in a sentence to make a point. I'm like, oh my God, Glenn's talking about leaky gut, or at least mentioning it. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, well, a lot about stuff, but sort of how it came out of your experience in being a pharmacist. And what I would love to ask you about is, what about now? How is all of the stuff that you were sort of, maybe feeling like you couldn't really step into it, or you really weren't that aware of it when you were working for 11 and a half years in that same location, working with these people and sort of, growing into your own experience of being a pharmacist? What is it like for you now, the clients and the people that you work with now, with where you are now? Because you kind of said, they are where they are until they aren't. That's true for all of us, right? Like we all are where we are until we aren't, and every single moment, if you think quantum, every single moment is a brand new moment. Every single moment, the universe is new, we are new. It's a new opportunity to just create, because that's what we're doing all the time. So what is it like for you now? Is there freedom? Is there opportunity? Is there a deeper connectedness with people? What's it like for you now as a transformative coach and everything you do now?
It's fulfilling on like a whole different level that I can't say never, that I rarely got to experience in pharmacy, because I'm the witness to people becoming their own hero and empowering themselves and going, oh, I do decide. I'm not just a victim to my circumstances and the people around me and what's happened to me and all of these things. And I've worked with women from all different walks of life, different age groups, categories, experiences. Some of them come to me because they're skeptical of the healthcare system, and they're like, oh, well, who would know better than her? Or some people come to me just because they like my energy. There's something happening right now that I don't even know how to explain, where it is just people are like, I don't know what it is about you, but there's something. And I'm also in this period of transition where I'm having a baby right away. So I'm like, I would love to work with you, but maybe in 6 months.
Yep.
Because I have to be the model of what's best for me. So as enticing as it is to be like, oh, all of these people, I can help them. And I'm like, oh, that's an old pattern from pharmacy and being a codependent my whole life and wanting to lift people up and put them on my shoulders, which is exhausting. So right now I mean, the majority of my fulfillment is actually even in moments with my stepdaughter and my partner and the people closest to me, seeing my own family of origin shift around me now that I have surrendered to the fact that it's not my job to shift, change, or save them.
Mm-hmm.
It's their job. And it's beautiful. Like just seeing and observing and witnessing and even myself. Thursday was a just a one of those days. Got hit with something and kind of took me down. And the next morning, I'm looking at my photos from the past year, and I'm like, no, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is perfect. It's exactly perfect. Um, but yeah, it's seeing people, have those little aha moments and awarenesses, and not not saying that I did it, witnessing them as they do it. I'm not responsible. I'm just the channel
Yeah.
that's present with them in the space so that they can learn what it feels like and learn to find peace and comfort and neutrality in their own bodies so that they can learn to know. That makes sense. Probably makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, as you're talking, because I'm just thinking, like, I so totally get what you're saying, especially as I'm running these two concurrent Eat Well, Be Well groups right now. And it is thrilling. It is so joyful. It is so life affirming for me to just experience exactly what you were talking about now, the insights, the ahas, when the penny drops, when something lands, when it just when they are so enthusiastic to say, oh my god, guess what I did, or guess what I discovered, or I was journaling and this came up for me, and or whatever their wins are, that they discovered, that they did it for themselves, that and we're just there to sort of like Glenn said, to hold out the hand, to support, to hold space, and just they do it for themselves. And so it kind of, as you were talking, it reminds me of parenting. And I mean, Glenn and I have one daughter together, Milana. She's 17. And she I just, I love her. I am so inspired by her every day. She is an absolute powerhouse and has been since the moment she came out, where like they put her on me to breastfeed. And she was like, just, hopping away like a little frog, with eyes, black eyes, wide open, ready to like take on the world. And that's how she's been like her entire,
She,
life, with us, sort
she
of
grew
thing.
out of the black eyes, though. She doesn't have those anymore.
No, but it was so, they were just complete, onyx like pebbles or something in her eyeballs. And now she has blue eyes. But she's, we've endeavored to parent her in a way that allows her to just be her and have her life experience. And I mean, there have been times where we probably could have done it better, we could have done it differently, but ultimately it's all unfolded the way it's unfolded. And I sit back in amazement, because I think like we've held space for her, these 17 years, to just be who she is capable of and meant to be. And she's a rock star. Like, she's just so awesome. She is so confident. She knows who she is. And she's like a born leader. And so I feel like, it's the same. That's what it was reminding me of. And to see her go through her trials and tribulations and whatever, and her, discoveries and wins and whatever, it just, to know that we were there supporting her along the way, and we were a part of it, but we weren't saying, you have to be this, you have to do this. um you know even now, on like all the conversations we've had, about certain things during the last year and a half of COVID, it's like, we support whatever you choose for yourself. And I'm so proud of her, because she's just making informed choices. Like, she researches like no one else I know. And the other night, when the election was happening, she was glued to the television for like 2 hours, because it was so exciting and thrilling for her. She was screaming at the results and everything. But she's just like, she wants to know, she wants to be part of it. She's excited about her life. She takes responsibility. She'll definitely come to us with questions and ask us for our opinions, but ultimately it's always like, well, we'll talk about it, whatever, but you have it in you to make your own decision, or, flip it back to her. Well, what do you think? And then, she gets to, and she always has something to say. So that's kind of what it reminded me of. I mean, it's not parenting, but the, traveling and companioning and holding space and supporting, and not trying to fix, not trying to judge, not trying to, critique or shame or, force or anything, just to be there for the journey so that that person can discover for themselves who and what they were all along. And then to, sometimes be there for that discovery is just so awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
totally.
amazing to just observe. And I'm curious, when you're talking about these conversations you can have with your daughter, where she can come to you and knows that she can ask and have space held for her, and you're not necessarily going to tell her what to do. I don't wonder if that isn't what's really lacking in what's happening, with also the lack of questioning. Because who is safe to ask? Like, who do we go to when we have questions, that we're allowed, who's going to hold space and not just tell us what's best for us, or that they don't have time, or, be that basically, the parent that's just like, I don't have time for you, or I don't have time for this, or just do as I say. Uh, it's interesting. I've seen lots of, actually, even though I'm not necessarily a parent yet, um, it's something that's really important to me. It is like healing my own relationship with my mother, and knowing the trauma, like through our own families, and how
Yeah.
that's come down, and wanting to, this is like, as part of my transition, I really, right now, I have this opportunity to have this business and be this business. I just want to be a good mother. I want to take everything I've learned in life and coaching and pharmacy and love, and just be a good mother, because I think that's important. If we cannot hold space for our children so that they can come to us when they need us and ask us questions and feel safe to have space held for them to learn to think for themselves, you know, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the this is one of the weirdest paradoxes I think about parenting is, see if I can explain this. You do need boundaries as a child growing up. So from the parents' perspective, or the people who um, end up raising the child, or are part of the team that raises the child, but we'll just stick with regular parents scenario. Um, One of the challenges is to know that your child is safe, and tell them that they are safe, and keep an eye on them for how that transpires in their day-to-day experience, because they need to nourish their own um, sense of agency and sovereignty and strength, and their will, and what their desires are, and all that, because they're growing, and they're just little sponges. They're pulling all these experiences, and they will make friends along the way, and they will have their challenges with their family of origin, as you said. But, you know, in terms of when that doesn't go so well, when you see kids who are kind of locked into this kind of scenario where they are convinced that they need to be protected from the outside world, instead of realizing they are here to sort of, be God, or whatever it is, in experience, like in the the experience of their life. We each do that. We are here to be, you know as unlimited as possible, but still specifically in our own life experiences. We'll set up our challenges, before we incarnate and whatever. But we're here for this game, but it is a game, and it's fun, and it's got some some shadow to it. Obviously, it's not all light. So when oh my wife's looking at the anyway.
Game, the word game. Okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
am just I am just I really admire our daughter too in terms of her figuring things out, and I know that some of her friend group in the past and even currently, they don't have that same innate sense of who they are. And we could say that, oh, Milana grew up in the Montessori school, um, so that could be a reason. But really, it's like, to me, that's part and parcel of who she was. Like, she chose us as her parents. She chose, in doing that, to be educated in a way that was very independence enhancing, but also teaching them how to be, leaders and team players, and to take no one to take a back, um, uh, you know, a lesser role, to let other people come and be their own best self, right? So, yeah, so I guess the paradigm is just like push them out into the world, convince them that they know, that they are safe, and be okay with falling and failing and getting up and getting moving on with it, instead of like hovering over them all the time and doing the helicopter thing, and like, you know like with Lassie and I, one of our favorite books is The Coddling of the American Mind by uh,
Jonathan Haidt and Greg
Jonathan Haidt and
Luciano.
Greg Luciano. I've trained her well.
Because I read it more
um,
recently than you did.
yeah, but his, like, especially Jonathan Haidt, like his whole, like, in that book they talk about, this the three fallacies and of life that seem to be the current thinking, and one of them being like, um, you know pay prepare the road for the child, not the child for the road. Like what happened to that wisdom? Like, we obviously knew all along in history and in human society, you prepare your child to go out into the world. Like, you don't do it the other way because it's impractical, and they'll keep coming back, and it's just like they're just spinning in the mud. They're not getting anywhere, and they're not growing. And how can they ever be a fully realized human being? So
The other thing that I just wanted, as you're talking about all this stuff that comes up for me, is also, and Milana, is critical thinking. Which Holly spoke to earlier,
yeah.
and how just incredibly important and valuable it is, and how for a lot of kids today, I think that it can really kind of just be sort of like, I don't know, not glossed over, but it's like it's it's not the same, where kids, I think, aren't necessarily encouraged to think critically as much as perhaps earlier generations did. And so one of the things that I just love about Milana is that she is just continually asking questions and engaged in critical thinking, her decision making and her critiques and sometimes judgments and whatever. It's just so entertaining and fascinating to listen to. And I mean, she was actually, Holly, I don't know if you know, but she was on our podcast with a friend of ours 2 episodes ago, where we talked a lot about freedom and justice. And it's kind of came because of the mandating of the vaccine passports in BC. And so Milana joined us for the second half of that and gave us her 17-year-old teenage perspective on what that could mean, and had all of us, the rest of us adults, kind of going, oh, yeah, we didn't necessarily see it from that perspective because we're not 17 anymore. And our life is different. And even the questions that she's asking and the decisions that she's making, she's really wondering about, stuff that we don't necessarily have to wonder anymore. Like, we're done with having kids, like there's stuff that we've done and we're in a different stage of life. And for her, it's like, well, if I do this, how is that going to impact this? And if I make this decision now, how will that impact me wanting to, go and try this later on? So yeah, critical thinking, huge, huge, huge. And I'm just so proud of her. And I guess, in some way, us, for cultivating that kind of environment for her. But really, I mean, I've said many times, I feel like we're just along for the ride of Milana Sheridan, because we just try to interfere as little as possible, even though, yes, boundaries, set, sometimes, but not in terms of like, you live under our roof, you'll think our way, kind of like was my experience growing up, mostly with my dad. Um, but it just, yeah, the to be able to think for yourself, make decisions for yourself, to fall, to stumble, to wipe yourself off, get up, try again. I mean, perfect example, when she was little, like 1.5 or something, she was climbing up the stair, or in our house, I was working in the kitchen, I thought Glenn was with her. um no, what did I think? That you were in the bathtub or something upstairs, and she, like, I kind of heard her, and all of a sudden there was just this like clunk, clunk, thud, 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 like so loud, and then a pause, and then this shrill scream that just like went through the house, and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? She had fallen head over heels and hit her head a bunch of times over the stairs as she fell down the stairs. I picked her up, I held her, she cried. She let it out for about 2 minutes. And then she got up and she walked and crawled right back up the stairs again, the one she had just fallen down and smacked her head on several times. I thought it was something in the bathtub that Glenn was doing all the fending, but this is her fearlessness. This is her determination. This is her fortitude. And I just feel like this is a part of who she is. And like, I feel so blessed that, she chose us as parents, because we got to experience that. And that is so different from what I feel like my childhood was like. Um, so that was just hey, I love my kid. Hey, critical thinking, yay, kind of plug.
It's well, and what you the story you just told was also a beautiful example of what happens when you have someone that can stay in a regulated nervous system to nourish and nurture you in a time when you're dysregulated, so that you can go back up the stairs without being scared.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that is another important piece that, because we do, it's like self-awareness, self this, self whatever, do it on your own. And there's this misconception that you do have to do it on your own. And it's like, well, no, when you're really dysregulated and scared and hijacked, or whatever you want to call it, yes, there will be times where you have to reassure yourself. But when you're 1.5, is there someone that can be there and
Yeah.
hold you so that you can come back to baseline or neutrality and go do it again?
Yeah, or when you're, say, 65 years old, but your central nervous system is, back sort of at that 1.5, year old stage, because there's a trigger that's going on.
Yeah.
I work in a chiropractic office part-time. And so, just, and I go to this chiropractor too. And what she practices is bioenergetic synchronization technique, which is just all about clearing interference, so that the spine can realign, and the central nervous system can just come back to that wonderful, balanced, natural state that it's meant to be in, rather than continually get triggered by stuff around us, or feelings within us that haven't been, fully processed. And so, yeah, that's, that I've great analogy. And yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
like sort of bringing
Well,
it into like what's happening now.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it is. It's a huge, I see from my helicopter, on my front deck at the lake where there are no people, I see highly reactive nervous systems and trauma responses coming up, and people are, everyone's looking around going, it feels like they're 5. And I'm like, it's because they are.
Yeah.
They are. They're 1.5, they're 2, they're 3, they're 4, they're 5. They're reactive, they're sensitive, they're hurt, they're clinging, they're desperate. And who is and then we're just all doing it to each other because we're
Mhm.
going right. It's contagious.
Right.
So
Well, I'm really excited for you to for you to meet your child that, in my belief system, chose you at this point in your trajectory, and your partner, I guess. It's like, if that had happened a couple of years earlier, it would be a
it wouldn't
different
have.
person, right? It would.
That's the thing. It wouldn't have.
And it didn't.
So yeah, it's
Not in
like
this reality.
they've been
No.
in the waiting room. They've had their ticket.
Hmm.
they've pulled like next, and they're just waiting for you to
Mhm.
come to the counter and like, okay, I'll be your mom.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Glenn. And I mean, I had to do a lot of healing and self-reflection and figure out what it was part of figuring out what I wanted. Because
Yeah.
I personally was just very resistant to the idea of a family and
Mm.
closeness and anything like that. And then as soon as I called it in, it was here. It was,
Wow.
this is the other thing about time. I'm sure in this room, we're all aware that there is no time and it expands and it collapses. And, even since Thursday, I'm like, has it been 3 days or has it been
Yeah.
3 weeks or 3 years?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
A lot of that
I
going
really,
on these days for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm in, I'm not sure if you've seen Doctor Strange, the Marvel movie Doctor Strange,
Mm-hmm.
but there's all these action scenes where the things are collapsing and expanding on each other. That feels like my experience of life for the last
Yeah.
probably year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Wow.
So yeah, no, I believe baby is absolutely perfectly on time and
Yeah.
made their choice, and it's all going to be part of it. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's the other part of it is like when there's children around, just to remind us that um, the version of myself, whoever's saying that, um, you're always connected to that child, and that I guess the psychology idea is just some experience happened and there was trauma and it's just stuck around, but if you're able to just reach and be with that person, that version of you, and reassure them and let them know how worthy they are, how loved they are, how vital they are to this existence, and that they will prevail. They will, you know, they are here for a reason, and just reminding that version of ourselves that hey, you matter. You're here for all of us, and like make those attempts or whatever it is to just let the wounds heal, and just again put like in Milana's example, let if they want to go up the stairs again, fine, do that, but let them know that there's support. So, and we always forget, we tend to forget that we're as you said, there's no time. Like what, it's just the way I try to view it, as there's like a diamond or a jewel, that each outside face is a version of us in time and in experience and in space, that we can access at any moment of now. So it's all now, but like which one do you want to, where do you want to be, which outer face do you want to be, and experience the light from that aspect. So if you go back to your 5-year-old self or your 15-year-old pissed off at the world self or whatever, like just be with that person and say, hey, I'm here for you.
yeah, yeah. I think boundaries and structure and support are some of the greatest gifts we can give, not only others but ourselves. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
Wow, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Just, oh my gosh, thank you. Like I feel like we could go on and there are so many more things we could talk about. And I feel like I want to do something with you, Holly. Like I want to like put some kind of something together, some kind of experience. You're so articulate, you're so attuned. I've loved being in your presence. And I just feel like there's so much more to talk about. So I'm just going to say that. Well, I did say it right now. But anyway, looking at the time, I'm just thinking that maybe today we will, wrap this up. And so before we do, we're going to move on into the next segment of the show, which is the super rapid fire question round, where Glenn will, for a minute, bombard you with a bunch of questions. So they're just kind of fun and a way to get to know you a little bit more. And so we just ask off the top of your head, Don't give any deep thought or anything, just what comes to mind. And then at the end of it, Glenn will tell you what you've won. And as always, for those listening, one is in air quotation marks because it's not a concrete, like tangible prize. Or is it? No, anyway. So, Honey Munch, let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
On your mark, get set, go.
Okay, Holly, do you sing in the shower?
No.
Do you dance when you are alone?
Yes.
Okay, how many tattoos do you have?
0.
Okay, and now, which do you prefer, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Bicycles or cars?
Cars, then go further.
Music or books?
Music.
Forgetting or forgiving?
Forgiving.
Yoga or walking?
Yoga.
Spring or autumn?
Spring.
Sweet or savory?
Tough one. I'm pregnant. Savory.
Swearing or hitting a pillow?
Swearing.
And writing or reading?
Ooh, writing. I'd rather
Ding, ding, ding,
create.
ding, ding.
Writing.
Okay, Glenn, why don't you tell Holly what she's won?
You have won from the minds of the ancients. A couple of pieces of advice. Okay, first of all, Seneca,
Wait a second. What are you reading this from?
from my mind.
Mm,
I just wrote it down earlier.
Okay.
From Seneca, the Roman genius. Don't stumble over something behind you. Okay. And then from Stephen Mitchell's book, The Enlightened Mind.
Oh, husband to
Don't-
Byron Katie mentioned earlier.
yes, I was like, wait a minute.
Oh, that guy?
There's a coincidence.
Okay.
No such
And
thing.
where he's talking about the book. It's an excellent book, but this is the beginning where he's talking about the Buddha. One of the things the Buddha said is, "It is proper to doubt. Do not be led by holy scriptures or by mere logic or inference, or by appearances, or by the authority of religious teachers. But when you realize that something is unwholesome and bad for you, give it up. And when you realize that something is wholesome and good for you, do it." Thank you, Stephen Mitchell and Buddha.
Hmm.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Good one. Good one. Yeah, really good one. Very apropos. Always.
So,
And right now.
and your Instagram, Lassie's going to ask you about that. But
Yes, I am.
that's probably the best place to visit your being.
Yeah, I really prefer Instagram. Facebook is interesting and it often feels unwholesome and not good for me. So I know I can reach more people there, and I know that's where we connected through, and I'm glad I did it. But I really feel safer and like I have more fun on Instagram, and like I'm getting to know the people that want to know me, not just you know, it's hard to explain. Yeah, no, I
So,
like Instagram. I don't know why.
so
Okay, and
your August 26th post would be what we've been talking about that kind of kicked
Yes.
off this whole connection.
Yeah, it's a picture of me in a white lab coat with the dispensary blurred out in the background, if anyone's looking for it. And it is on Facebook as well. So
Okay, and it's Holly.McCorriston. So we'll
yes.
spell your name in the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah.
look at
And
how
then
you
on
just totally took over that,
Facebook.
Glenn.
Going off.
Off script. No, there's no script. Okay, so yeah, so Instagram, and then you also have a website, don't you?
I do, just hollymccorriston.com.
Okay.
It
All right. So
could use a little bit of work, but again, I'm in transition, so I'm like, I'm not gonna worry about it. I can be reached through there.
okay, so we will put up a slide, just before now, so that if someone does want to find out more about you, connect with you, then they have those places to go, Instagram and your website.
Amazing.
So,
Thank you.
Holly, again, thank you for this incredible conversation. What an absolute delight, what an absolute joy. And just for me, I don't know, like comforting and life affirming to just hang out with you for this, almost 2 hours, knowing that you have so much on the go and knowing that you have a long drive ahead of you today. So thank you for inspiring us to get up an hour earlier so that we could do this an hour earlier, because now we have an extra hour sort of, for the rest of our day. And it's a gorgeous day here in Sanishton. So huzzah. And just thank you for everything that came up, because it was such a rich, thought-provoking conversation. Very grateful for everything, as always. So thank you, Honey Bunch, for co-steering the ship. Thank you to our special guest, Holly McCorriston, and thank you to you, everyone who has listened, who has watched, who has engaged in whatever way you've engaged in. We are so grateful for your time and presence as always. So thank you for today, and stay tuned, because there will be another episode of Who Do You Think You Are coming up in another week or two. Thanks again, and bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lassia Kohut, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Holly McCorriston. Music, Vasco Lourenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke, copyright 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lassia Kohut Soul Excavator, please visit www.lassiakohut.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and or let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?